So welcome along, this is the preview to West London VR Race 4.1, the first of Series 4. On your right there you see the columns, that's Windsor Guildhall. Those columns are quite famous because Christopher Wren built them not supporting the roof, just to appease the regulators at the time. We go past Windsor Castle on the right, and the other landmark just on the left, which you won't actually see, is a cyclist cafe tucked in the railway station just to your left there, as we go down the hill. So that little bit of climbing at the beginning was just about all you're going to get in this race, I'm afraid. This is going to be flat, and then a bit more flat as we roll down Castle Hill, which will give you a nice little launch pad into the flat sections of the race. As I say, this is almost deadpan flat all the way. It follows the River Thames, and by following the river in the latter stages of the river, there's not much of a descent, shall we say, if any, and I think this would probably amount to zero descent. As we go around the back of Windsor, and we're going to go out on the Datchet Road towards Runnymede, and then after that we will go through Staines, twist back through Wraysbury to the finish. If none of that means anything to you, don't worry, just remember it's going to be flat, and you are going along on both sides. When you get to Staines, you'll cross over the River Thames, and on the way back you'll be sort of pretty much in the Thames Valley, going around a few sort of little lakes and reservoirs that are in that little Thames Valley there to serve water for Heathrow Airport and West London. So as I say, still in Windsor, as we go through this little, I always think this is supposed to be a cycling lane, but it never quite tells you that it's a cycling lane, so it might just be an extended pavement for the tourists. As we go past Windsor and Eton Riverside Station, the cycling cafe was in Windsor and Eton Central, which is on the Western Railway line that comes out of Paddington. This line goes up to Waterloo, both into London. And that's about it as we go into the final outskirts of Windsor, just past Home Park on your left, which houses lots of sports, mainly rugby I think, and lots of other little shows during the year. I think they have horse jumping there, and show jumping as it's probably called. As you can see, deadpan flat, and just ahead of us will be a bridge over the River Thames, our first crossing, the Datchet Bridge. This is particularly hard to keep a commentary going on this one because in terms of cycle racing, there's not a lot to be said other than this will be a bunch sprint. In fact, when we ran this one before in a previous series, this was one of the biggest bunch sprints we ever had, and some of us, the slower riders like myself, lucked out by being able to hang on to the front group and getting into that sort of sprint, probably finished higher than we would normally, where a race has a couple of ramps to sort the field out, and finished higher and faster than I think I'd ever done before, and a few people found the same. So this will be a very fast course based on previous experience. As you can see, still flat as you go past Home Park. This is the sort of area that floods when we get excessive rain, because it's at the latter stages of the Thames, just before London, and of course, you know, this Thames goes miles up in a westerly direction, and of course the cumulative effect of heavy rain on a winter can bring it all down to the sort of flat levels like this, which tend to flood. So we're most of this race is on on land very vulnerable to flooding, and it's, as I say, just to repeat myself, it's very, very flat. And of course, as I say, this is likely to be a very big bunch sprint. And for the pure sprinters, the guys who are good at this, you need to be very aware of the fact that you're going to have a larger bunch sprint than you normally do. And part of the reason for cheekily putting this in as the first race is that can actually unsettle the field a little bit, because some good racers will finish slightly further down than they would expect to, because a few chances have got into the peloton and had a good sprint at the end. As we go over the River Thames there, this is the Datchet Bridge, bringing us over into the Datchet Road. We'll shortly be passing through Datchet. There's not a lot of notable landmarks on this particular ride, although luckily for me, having to fill in commentary, there are probably enough notable little things to point out on the right and left of some interest. Not here though, as we go along the flat road. So as I say, I think the sprinters will need to be very, very clear. if anybody can try and get a little breakaway like some of the elite riders, then I think that's a safe bet. Because I think last time, if I remember correctly, a few top riders finished a little bit lower down than they would normally expect to. And bear in mind that in the series, the points are awarded for position, not time. Therefore, if you happen to be on the same time as somebody but 3 places down, you will get 3 less points. So the importance of finishing high up is there if you're going to compete for the series. And remember, this series does offer trophies for first, second and third place. And in fact, this series will have a secondary competition called the 6 times table, and that table will be based on your best 6 results. So even if you are one of the elite riders, if this one does mess up your positioning in the general classification, you're still in with a shout for the 6 times table. I nickname it 6 of the best, but I suspect that's probably a bit of an outdated phrase. So this is Datchet. We're not going. Datchet village is just to our left. It's quite preserved and nice looking village, but we're not going to see it today as we go along the River Thames on your right. And the boat yards here, where you can hire boats for little pleasure cruises along the Thames and holidays and whatnot. And we'll shortly be out of Datchet, but that's all you're going to see of it, I think, really, realistically. So, as I was saying, the 6 of the best, or the 6 times table, as it's officially called, will take your 6 best rides over the series. This means that if you miss one, you're not prejudiced. You can still in with a shout of winning that competition, should you do 6 or more rides. And also, if you do 6 or more rides, remember that you can always better one of your previous rides. So, if you've done 6 rides and you do a 7th, which is better, the 7th one replaces your weakest one in the previous 6. So there's always something to strive for. So 2 competitions there. There's also team classification in this as well. And so 3 lots of prizes to the successful riders. We're coming out of Datchet as we go past the little speed sign on the road there. Now this is a dead flat road. This goes down to Old Windsor. We're shortly going to cross the Thames for our second time. Just a little bit around this bend, as you'll see in a moment. But as I say, no gradient whatsoever. This is going to stick together unless somebody can get a little super group to pull away. I can't see this breaking up. And I think the tactic might be that some of the teams, if you can work in unison and do a break at a certain point, even if you take some of your rivals, it may be worth having 10 or so riders away in a break, if you can possibly manage that, because it gives you the certainty of finishing 10th. If 50 riders all arrive at the line at once, that 10th could turn into 15th because a couple of people have surged at the right moment. So I think a group breakaway might be a good tactic if people can act in concert. I'm not sure quite how feasible that is. Certainly people in the same team might be able to do it, but I think you'd all need to know at what point you're going to do it and all line yourselves up. So perhaps pick a certain point, like this bridge coming up just now, which might sort of say, well, okay, when we go to that bridge, my guess is that I would do it at Staines Bridge, because that's not too long to go out solo if you are going to do a break. So Staines Bridge is the third of 3 Thames crossings. This is the second, just coming up, as you can see around this bend, as we go over towards Old Windsor. Quite a quaint little bridge here. I think they have the Windsor Regatta, which is of course a rowing racing event by this bridge. And in fact, the regattas, Henley is the famous regatta, and you might have seen it featured in the film about Facebook, wasn't it? I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, the film behind the story behind the Facebook founder and everything, they certainly went to Henley in that film. Henley's the famous one, but in fact, actually, it's consecutive weekends. All these regattas flow down the Thames. There's Marlow Regatta, Windsor Regatta, Datchet Regatta, whatever. It might actually be the Datchet Regatta that is there, but I certainly remember cycling past and the field on your left full of boats when they had a regatta here. Now, as we go down here just ahead, if you look on your right, you might just catch a bit of building that looks like a faux castle. It's a fake castle. It's actually an entrance gate to Windsor Castle, which is a royal residence where the Queen lives. As I say, this is a little back entrance. I think the royal family quite often come out. You can see it just there on your right. It's the False Castle. They quite often use that as an exit, because if you come out the front of Windsor Castle, of course everybody sees you and there's crowds, and you discreetly get out there. Now the building on your right here is Prince Charles's farm shop. Now Prince Charles, as Duke of Cornwall, owns a lot of land and farms, and he sells the produce out of that building there, which is his shop. I think the food's quite good, but it's not cheap, so save up if you're going shopping there. They do have some nice things in there, but I can tell you it's not my regular weekend grocery shopping destination. Now we're heading into Old Windsor again. This road runs parallel to the River Thames. The Thames is on our left. Remember, we've just crossed it and turned around a left-hand bend. So we're not going to rise again anytime soon. Old Windsor. I kind of assume that Windsor was probably here before the castle was built, and Windsor as we know it, being effectively the new Windsor, was probably built around the castle, which of course was built by William the Conqueror after the Norman invasion in the 11th century, I guess. Might have been the 12th, but yeah, I would suggest the 11th century. Windsor Castle built because there is a little hill along there, and of course with the river there was access to and from London, and the hill commanded a decent view across the area, which is largely flat, apart from a little ramp to our right which takes up to Windsor Great Park, one of our favourite hills to climb, Crimp Hill up there, and the next version of it a bit further on, Priest Hill, taking you up to Englefield Green. Not many hills around here, but there are a couple of decent ones. In fact, that whole area around Egham has got some nice little climbs. Still in Old Windsor, it's still flat. I'm going to repeat that a few more times before we get to the end of this preview, I'm absolutely certain. And as you can see, this is slightly built up, and I suspect, as I say, there was an old settlement here. In fact, the high street for Old Windsor is to our right. This is a more modern road, I suspect, because all the shops and the character of the place are just in a road that runs parallel to our right, which is, of course, when we're going out on cycle rides, we tend to choose over and above this one. Although I will say, you do see a lot of cyclists along this road, and I think there are people coming up from Surrey, going to Windsor for a ride, and heading for that cafe, the Cinnamon Cafe that I mentioned, which is opposite the castle in the central station. So, piling on, and this is quite a busy road, which is why we choose the other ones generally, but of course on RGT this will be traffic free. It's for your enjoyment, and minus any potholes or any other inconveniences that may exist on the real life road. So you see, fairly residential destination. There's not a lot in the way of industry in this particular village. I suspect historically it used the river for its trade, either fishing or whatever might have happened in bygone years. A couple of shops there. There's some nice little property developments, of course, just to our left. The river's just, not many metres from us on the left, and they have built some nice, desirable little buildings in between this road and the river, so you get a nice little view. And unfortunately, the area is vulnerable to flooding, as I said. So I think some of the modern ones have sort of kind of built them so that the actual living quarters are above, say, a garage or something like that, so if you do flood, it doesn't actually spoil your carpets. So we're nearly out of Old Windsor now. We're going to pass a pub which used to be called the Bells of Oisley, and has got some brand name on it these days, but I think in small letters underneath still has the Bells of Oisley written under it for its historic connotations. And it was a nice little pub where you could drink outdoors with the sort of river view, if you like, and very popular. But as I say, it's been taken over in modern times by one of these branded sort of steakhouse chains, and I don't think it's quite as quite as twin us. So there's the river on the left, and that's the Bells of Ouseley on our right. As I say, I think it's lost its charm because it's now run by a big corporate, but this happens in the modern world. You can see the boats along the river there. The houses on the other side have got big gardens, and quite a few of them have got a boat moored at the bottom, so I assume that they command decent prices in the market. So now we're just coming up to a little roundabout. If you turn right up there, that's Priest Hill, which I mentioned earlier, which is one of the good climbs around here. If you live in this area, it's reasonably flat because it's a river valley, but there's climbs to be had there: Crimp Hill and Priest Hill, Egham Hill, all worth a climb, and take you up to the Great Park, which is really nice to ride around. Now we're leaving and we're going into Runnymede, which has quite a few historic references. King John signed the Magna Carta here in, I don't know when actually, I've forgotten the date, but centuries and centuries ago, which was one of, it's a very important moment in British history, or English history at the time, because Britain wasn't a nation at the time, it was England. And this was one where some of the power was ceded. As you go through these toll houses, we now enter Runnymede, and this is the area where the Magna Carta was signed. So these toll houses here on the right and left, this would have been a toll road once, and that's where you would have paid your dues going in. And there's a couple of small toll houses at the other end, as we'll see in a moment. But as I say, the Magna Carta was signed here by King John, and it was one of the first times that power was ceded from the monarch, the crown, to Parliament, and I suppose there's a bit of liberation along the way. Now the other reason this area is famous is just to our left there's a small piece of land that is actually not British, it's American, it's owned by the USA, and technically you could step onto that land and not be arrested because you're not in Britain. I think you'd starve to death if you stayed there too long, but the reason that it is territorially deemed to be the USA and not the UK is because the land was gifted by the British to the Americans, and a memorial for John F. Kennedy is built there. So you can visit the Kennedy Memorial there, and as I say, while you're visiting it, you will have left Britain. So I don't think you need a passport, just in case you wondered. You also see that hill on our right, this escarpment here. This is effectively Priest Hill. If you get to the top of Priest Hill and turn left, there's an Air Force memorial at the top of that hill, just on our right, which is well worth visiting, because if you go up it, you can look right across London from that vantage point. You can see for absolutely miles. As I say, it's quite a haunting place because there are many names engraved on the walls of it of British air crew that died during World War II. I believe it's World War II only, but I might be wrong. But it is quite sad. But on the other hand, there is a joyous view from the top. If you can there's a little tower inside, so you just need to go up a few steps, and you get up to this tower, and well, you can see forever. London, for those of you who are not from the area, this road is, if you like, heading towards London. So London's sort of ahead of us, and I'd say from that hill you can see right across it, because London, of course, is in the valley of the River Thames. So this is Runnymede, and those are the historic points of interest there. King John signing the Magna Carta, and John F. Kennedy Memorial. You see the Thames again on our left. Again, this is an area vulnerable to flooding, as you can imagine. If the river levels rise something like a metre or so, you're starting to get some water there. And of course, the water will run down from the hills on our right as well. So, as I say, very, very, very vulnerable. Now, we're heading towards Staines next. And for those, I suppose those of us in Britain, Staines often conjures up images of Ali G and Sacha Baron Cohen's character. And he was always part of the Staines Massif. Staines is coming up shortly. We're not going to see too much of it because we're going to go over the bridge and then wind out of it. And Staines actually was rather upset by the bad image that Sacha Baron Cohen's character gave the town, and renamed itself Staines upon Thames to give itself a bit more glamour. I'm not sure it makes it much more glamorous. It's not a bad place. It never was. But as I say, changing your name for a TV character sounds odd. Of course, Sacha Baron Cohen's gone on to make some films with other characters, Borat, and is now, of course, much more internationally known than at the time of the TV series Ali G. And the Staines massive. If you do live around these parts, you will realise just how well researched that was, because a lot of the references in the TV series actually reference real life places in the area, and it was I suppose pointless for an audience that probably wouldn't have understood that, but they really were real places. So whoever wrote that, and he did have a writing partner in that one, I think knew this area quite well, because there was some very, very precise references to places that exist in the area. It was very clever as well, because whilst it mimicked a certain type of character, it did it with some underlying knowledge of the various scenes and things that underpinned that at the time. And I think this was a point lost on some of the media critics who didn't really understand quite what he was doing, even though they thought they did. But there we are. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. So we come up to these two little toll gates here. As I mentioned, it was a toll road once, and these are the other two toll booths at the other end where you would have paid to go on the road. We come out of that, we're going to pass all the glamour of the London's peripheral motorway, the M25, and then head towards Staines through an area known as Egham Hyde. This is actually Egham. We're not going to see Egham again, we're skirting it. So although we're at the Egham roundabout here, about to go into the M25, which you can see is the bridge above us, or in front of us, sorry. So this is Egham, but you're not really going to see Egham. What you're going to see is a place called Egham Hyde, which again is just a road running alongside the River Thames. So nothing changing on this route. It is just Thames side from almost start to finish. See a few developments going up here. I'm not quite sure what the attraction of coming to Egham for your business HQ is, but it is conveniently close to London, and this area is quite economically well off. It's not, when I say this area, I mean generally this sort of area just to the west of London along the Thames, including Slough, Windsor, Maidenhead, Staines, Egham, towns like that, is quite a business centre and economically quite powerful, reflected in some quite nice property values to go with it. Not as expensive as London, of course, but nevertheless a nice area to live. There's no doubt about that, as we see another one of these modern developments. You can see the way the road's built up just to the left here. This is a flood defence. So you can see the natural level is where the road is, but they built it up by the riverside to stop flooding. And all the buildings that they are putting up to our left will of course be slightly higher than the natural level because of this. But again, you can see this goes pretty much the length of this road, this barrier that they built to stop flooding. This is fairly industrial, I would say, along this road, although industrial is probably the wrong word in the modern era. It's more tech industries, whereas once there were actually factories along here, right up to the roundabout at Staines that we're about to encounter. Now when we do get up to this roundabout, there's a sharp left, and when you're riding on RGT, you should note this, because at that point this is the turn back, and we'll go over Staines Bridge as soon as we do this hard left, this sharp left, go over Staines Bridge, and we'll sort of almost double back and we'll go back down the other side of the Thames. Now these are the latter stages of the race, and if you should decide upon a strategy of trying to get a breakaway group to ensure a safe position at the finish, I think this is where you need to start thinking about it. So it's not this roundabout, it's the next one, I believe, where we do the hot sharp left over Staines Bridge. And as I say, when we do get to that, I mean, it will just feel like a bend on RGT. You won't see a roundabout, of course, on the magic roads. But as I say, it's I think this is the point where you start thinking about whether or not you are going to try for a solo break. Just going on a cycle path over the bridge. It's an old bridge and it's narrow, and I'm pleased to say they have built this cycle path to save us riding over in that traffic, which generally queues because there's set traffic lights at the end of it, which also means you quite often get over quicker than the motorists, thanks to this cycle path. So this is our third and final crossing over the River Thames, and a rare sight in Britain, the pedestrians actually sticking to the pedestrian side of it. I missed the exit there accidentally, so I'll have to go down to the next break, but it did mean I missed that red traffic light and kept this video a little bit shorter. So here we are, I can get onto this road here, so a little bit of cheating, but it was accidental. So now we're going to swing out of Staines and head towards Wraysbury, Horton, those little villages where we're going to finish. So we swing round here, not the road on the left, sorry, swing round off the traffic lights, and then head off towards Stanwell, Wraysbury, Horton, those villages for the finish. So we're going in the opposite direction. This building on just ahead of us to your right was once a railway station, nicely converted into something else. I'm not quite sure why. A little branch of the Western Railway that went from Staines to West Drayton, where you could get the main line between London and Bristol. Long since gone. I think that was one of those stations shut in the 1960s, if I remember. So here we go. Again, this is going to be deadpan flat. We're just going down the other side of the river in the opposite direction to the way we've been. So don't expect any hills or attack points in terms of gradient. I think this is your only chance of getting away here is a small group and acting in concert. But as I say, expect a big bunch finish. This was a huge bunch in the sprint last time we did it, one of the biggest we've ever seen, and that's because everybody managed to stay in the group because there's no hills. As I say, this makes it a bit of a lottery at the end. Now, as organisers, slightly cheekily, I quite like that. I mean, it means that some people who would expect to win might actually fall down the rankings a little bit, and it gives them a bit more incentive to do better in other races. So it shakes up the mix a bit. Now, if you're one of those people, of course, you're going to think the opposite to me, and not like the idea that somebody might just pinch one of your places. But it is a lottery. There are plenty of races left where I've put in some little lumps and things like that. So at the end of the day, the good racers will, I think, will gravitate to the top, if that's the right phrase, towards the end of the series, or after a few races. And remember too, I was mentioning that 6 times table, so your 6 best races will count. So even if you have a disaster in this race and you're struggling to get into the top 3, then don't worry about it, because you can always go for the 6th of the best, right, or the 6 times table as I've called it. And finally, the team classification, remember that's there too. I say finally, of course, there is one other award, and for those of us that are never going to win a race, and that's people like me, there is the 21 Done Club. So if you ride 21 West London VR races, we will send you free of charge in the post a commemorative badge saying that you've done 21 of these races, along with a couple of stickers and so forth. And that's all free. You just have to ride 21 of these races and contact us. We'll know if you've done 21, but we haven't got your address, so unless you contact us, and details are on the website, we won't know where to send the badges. But they're all free, and actually people seem quite eager. I mean, people are quite quick to email us when they've done 21, so they get the little badge. So they seem popular, shall we say, and I'm expecting to give away quite a few during Series 4. Hopefully you'll be one of them. Whether you're at the front or the back, there's something for everybody in West London VR racing. So as you can see, still flat, and nothing too interesting to report this side of the river. It doesn't have the historical interest points that we did earlier on, although these are nice, quite nice villages to live in. What they lack in, shall we say, elevation, because they are flat, you don't always get these sort of pretty village views that you might get in more hilly areas. But they have got this sort of nice, I don't know how you quite describe it, but there is a nice sort of feel to them. They kind of feel a little bit laid back, and I don't know, there's something nice about them anyway. As I say, the only downside is that they are vulnerable to flooding. Not that this happens regularly. If it happened once every 20 years, that would be quite worrying. But there were a few years ago where it did flood badly down here, and everybody was affected. But as I say, it's got this. We've got these lakes. I think there's a lake to our right here, and I think a lot of triathletes and people like that use those lakes for various things. So I think it's got, as I say, it's got a nice chilled out vibe. That's probably what I'm looking for here. It's kind of sedate, but it's on the edge of London, but it's sedate, it's chilled out. And as I say, if you want to do water sports, there's a load of little lakes around here and reservoirs. The reservoirs feeding water to Heathrow Airport and West London. So the water sports, this is a terrific area for. And of course, it's quite nice cycling here because you don't have to go up any hills. And I quite often ride down these parts on a Sunday just for the pleasure of it. As you can see, it's these are the sort of houses between the villages, and it's a Horton Wraysbury area now. So we went through Datchet earlier. The next villages along from this is Datchet, so we'll have done almost a complete U, and only the sort of distance between Datchet and Windsor will be the bit that we don't repeat on the other side of the river. And that's because all these races, they're aimed to be 10 miles long, but of course we work in kilometres, so that comes out about 16 kilometres. So these races will tend to be between 15 and 17 kilometres long, and I just pick sort of reasonable places to start and finish based on factors like the terrain and where it's I rather than make everything 16.1 kilometres, I will look at the course and say, well, that's a logical place to finish, rather than sort of finish on a twisty bend or something like that. So they are thought through, and I do like to actually, for all that, I do like to put a little bend about 500 metres in front of this start line, finishing line, sorry, just to spice things up, which I think makes it more interesting for the racers. They'll all moan at me, but they love it, really. Trust me, they love it. So, as I say, we're thundering on. We're not far from the finish now. There's nothing spectacular about the finish. It's just a sort of stretch of road that looks a little bit like this. And you'll need to keep an eye on the distance remaining digits on your screen when you're riding the RGT race, just to get your sprint distance right. And as I say, this will be a big bunch sprint, so as much as getting the distance right, you're going to have to be looking around you what everybody else is doing. I think the consensus is that you kind of sit, I don't know, 3 or 4 places back and then go for a surge in the last 50 metres or something like that. Other people might tell you different, and other people might not want to tell you because they know how to do it and they don't want to share the secret. Who knows? I'm never up there to do it, but it does seem to me that surges on the line do seem to steal places from people. And I think this is because when you're surging, the draft effect on RGT allows you to go slightly faster than the person in front of you. You know, the person at the very front isn't getting the drafting effect and is therefore likely to be overtaken. So if you're 10 metres from the line and people are surging, they're probably going to overtake you before you can do much about it. So as we go through this village, shortly afterwards we're going to hit the finishing line. So get ready, and I'm probably about all done with the commentary, to be honest. It's amazing that I can actually talk for all this time about a flat course, but luckily history has thrown in some interesting places along the way to keep me talking. As I say, the finishing line coming up shortly, and as you can see, it's fairly straight, so there's not going to be one of those little twisty bends I mentioned to encounter and negotiate. It's just, I think, everyone for themselves. Well, good luck, and we'll see you on the line. West London VR Race 4.1.